That autumn started quietly, with cold winds sweeping through the crowded streets. That morning, as usual, I woke up around 6:30 and drew back the curtains to look outside. The sun was just rising, casting a pale golden light over the rooftops, wet with morning dew. But something felt off. A strange, indefinable feeling crawled through my chest. The apartment was still, but on the kitchen table, a small piece of paper lay tilted next to the coffee cup I'd left from the night before. I walked closer, squinting at it. The handwriting wasn't familiar. Messy black ink scrawled across the page. "We know everything." I muttered to myself, trying to make sense of it. Maybe it was a prank, or something I had misplaced, now discovered by someone else. But no, I was certain it hadn't been there last night. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands, staring at every letter. My heart skipped a beat, though not yet a panic. I exhaled slowly, muttering under my breath, "A joke." But who would know this much about me? The question lingered, unanswered. Walking into the living room, my eyes caught my phone on the table. The screen lit up with a new notification. A strange email. No sender listed, only the subject line, "The truth awaits you." I tapped it open. For a moment, I stared at a blank screen. At the bottom, a tiny line read, "Don't miss it." Annoying unease started to creep in. Normally, I would have deleted a spam email without thinking, but this time, I couldn't. It felt like something was quietly reaching into my calm life, stirring a vague sense of dread. I sank onto the sofa, holding the note, my mind racing with impossible scenarios. Then the doorbell rang. I frowned. No one was supposed to visit at this hour. Life had been quiet all month, uneventful, predictable. I cracked the door open and found a small package sitting on the floor outside. No fingerprints, no name, just a small, perfect white box. My hands went cold as I picked it up. Inside was a USB drive. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. Part of me wanted to throw it away immediately, but another part felt compelled to open it. I quietly plugged it into my computer. The screen lit up with a single video file, The Final Truth. I clicked play. The footage made my stomach drop. It was clearly from the security cameras inside my own apartment, the very place I was standing. Moments I didn't remember. Someone moving in shadows, hiding their face, yet their gestures, their posture. I recognized them immediately. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone I had once trusted. My hands shook, but I forced myself to stay seated. No, this can't be. How could they? I whispered, struggling for an explanation. Every rational thought collapsed. The truth was too vivid, yet too absurd to accept immediately. A wave of panic rose as I glanced at the clock. Only 12 noon, and yet it felt like the world had tipped upside down. I replayed the past few weeks in my head. Strange messages, missed calls, fleeting shadows in the hallway. I had ignored them, convinced they were coincidences. Now, they formed a picture I couldn't deny. Someone had been watching me. Someone knew everything. I sank into the chair, my head throbbing, my hands trembling. Helplessness surged through me, but another part of me started analyzing, observing. What do they want? Is this just the beginning or the end? I asked myself. No answers came. Only a creeping sense of unease. The phone rang. A call from an unknown number. I answered, and a cold voice said only, "We know everything. Be careful who you trust." Then it hung up. I stared at the screen, uncertain whether to feel fear or challenge. The whole day passed without leaving my apartment. Everything outside seemed normal, untouched, but inside, a storm was forming. Every sound, every glance, every tiny detail felt suspicious. I began checking every email, message, and encounter. Everything was potentially a clue, everything potentially a threat. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the hallway made my heart race. I looked out the window, at the scattered street lights, glowing yellow, and wondered, who was watching me? Who had left these signs? In my mind, I tried to reason, to rationalize. Maybe it was a prank, but how could a prank be this sophisticated? Maybe it was a warning, but a warning of what? I went back to the video on the USB, watching the images again and again. Fleeting, almost invisible movements that sent shivers down my spine. I realized one thing: the conflict had begun, and I was at the center of it. Even if I didn't yet know who was behind it. The next morning, I went outside, trying to act normal. But nothing felt normal. I noticed glances from passers-by, shadows flitting in coffee shops. Every moment felt suspicious. I told myself, I'm overthinking, or maybe I'm standing at the edge of something huge. Over the following days, the strange signals continued. Envelopes on my desk, emails with no sender, calls in the middle of the night. Every small event was a piece of a puzzle whose rules I didn't yet understand. I, the main character of this hidden game, was on uncertain ground, both curious and terrified. Unable to stop, I began documenting everything: time, location, people involved. Every detail could be a clue. I felt like I was walking a thin line, drawn between curiosity and fear, unable to step back. Deep down, I knew everything was leading toward a breaking point, where the truth would finally be revealed. And while I tried to maintain composure, one question haunted me: who left the USB? Who was watching me? And what awaited me on the other side? I didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain: the spark of conflict had ignited, and my life would never be the same again. The morning after receiving the USB, I barely slept. I stayed glued to my computer screen, staring at the footage as if it could explain itself. But there was no explanation. Only one undeniable truth: someone had been watching me, and they knew everything. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number: meet me, noon, parked by the river, alone. I hesitated. My instincts screamed to ignore it, but some mix of curiosity and recklessness pushed me to go. I arrived at the park right on time, sunlight high, people strolling, dogs barking, kids laughing, everything ordinary. But I knew better now. Nothing was ordinary anymore. A figure approached. Hood up, hands buried in pockets. My pulse raced. I recognized the walk immediately. It was someone I had trusted, someone I never thought could betray me. They stopped a few feet away, eyes hidden, and handed me an envelope. No words, just that I opened it. Inside, a stack of printed emails, screenshots of private conversations, call logs, all damning evidence. Every secret I thought was hidden, every lie I had suspected, laid bare in black and white. My stomach churned. I whispered under my breath, they did this to themselves. I sank onto a nearby bench, exhaling slowly, letting it sink in. Every strange message, every fleeting shadow, every tiny detail I had brushed off, it all clicked into place. They had trapped themselves, and I just watched, calm, observing, not intervening. The figure turned to leave. I wanted to call out, confront them, but no words came. Instead, I just watched as their mistakes played out in real time. Satisfaction coursed through me, cold, sharp, undeniable. Justice had arrived quietly, but unmistakably. Later that afternoon, another email appeared on my phone. Subject: check your messages. I hesitated, then opened it. One single line. Every lie you thought was safe is gone. Everyone knows. I stared at it, incredulous. And then I realized it wasn't about me anymore. It was about them. The web of deception they had spun was unraveling, and I was the calm observer. Watching it all, the following days confirmed it. Friends sending screenshots, co-workers asking pointed questions, strangers dropping subtle hints. Everything aligned perfectly. Every action, every lie, every manipulation, it was all coming back to them. Publicly, quietly, unmistakably, I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. They didn't see this coming. Every plan, every lie, every scheme had spectacularly backfired. And I, the supposed victim, simply watched as the scales tipped that night. I walked through familiar streets, yellow streetlights reflecting off wet pavement. Every detail now felt significant. Every passerby, every passing car, potentially a clue. I muttered to myself, observe, stay alert, watch. I felt like I was in a game where the rules were just being revealed. Everything led to the climax, a confrontation in broad daylight. In a crowded cafe, I walked in and saw them, sweat glistening on their forehead, eyes darting nervously as everyone around seemed to know everything. Emails, messages, screenshots, all exposed. I sat down, coffee in hand, pretending to be just another customer, but inside, a rush of satisfaction surged. Minute by minute, I watched them unravel. Every gesture, every glance, every quiver, all confirmed it. They had brought this on themselves. I didn't intervene. I didn't speak. I just watched, quietly, as justice, silent but absolute, took its course. I thought back to the past weeks, the strange messages, fleeting shadows, tiny anomalies I had ignored. Now, everything aligned into a perfect picture, and they were the center of their own downfall. The truth was too clear to deny. The next morning, another email. Every lie has been exposed. No place left to hide. I smiled, picked up my phone, and whispered, game over. Everything's clear now. In the days that followed, the fallout spread. Friends, co-workers, even strangers who had no connection, everyone knew. They panicked, faltered, hesitated, while I observed, step by step. Justice didn't need my intervention. It was unfolding on its own. By the weekend, I walked down the familiar streets, sunlight on my face, the wind carrying the scent of fallen leaves. I looked toward where they had last appeared. A strange calm settled over me. The spark had ignited, the conflict had escalated, and every action, every lie, every scheme had come full circle. I, once the victim, now stood outside it all, witnessing justice, quietly but absolutely being served. In that moment, I realized something. Life would never be the same. What had happened was a lesson, a warning, a kind of fairness that needed no interference. I walked on, calm, confident, knowing that the conflict had reached its peak, and only the final resolution awaited. That day, I knew nothing would last any longer. A message popped up in the morning. Meet at the usual place. 6 p.m. Alone. No trace, no extra warning. I calculated carefully. This was the final chance, the moment everything would be revealed. No room for mistakes. All afternoon, I barely looked away from my phone. I checked every detail, organized all the evidence, prepared mentally. Emails, messages, call logs, photos, everything had to be ready. I knew that one misstep could ruin everything. My heart raced, pounding against my chest. Yet deep inside, I maintained absolute calm. Walking down the alley leading to the old cafe where this conflict had started. The air felt heavy, almost alive with tension. The wind whistled through rusted signs. The yellow streetlights splashed broken patterns on cracked concrete. The space seemed to shrink, leaving only me and my target, like a final scene in a thriller. I noticed every tiny sound, footsteps, the wind, even my own heartbeat. And then they appeared. Familiar figure, sharp eyes, but slightly jittery. They tried to appear calm, but I could read the fear in their eyes. They realized control had slipped from their hands. I advanced step by step, eyes locked on them, voice cold but measured, thought this would all go smoothly. They flinched, raised their heads, eyes wide. The truth had reached them. I placed the envelope on the table. Inside, every email, message, call, log, everything they thought was hidden. I stared them down. It's all out. No way back. Every lie, every move exposed. They tried to justify themselves, stammering, hoping desperately, but I just smirked. Every word, every gesture became new proof, self-destructing in real time. I stepped back, observing, noting every bead of sweat, every trembling hand, every expression of panic. The silence was so thick I could hear their breaths. The wind whistling through the alley, my own heart pounding. I pulled out my phone, hit play, and broadcast the full conversations they'd had with their accomplices. Every word, every tone, exposed the lies, betrayals, and schemes. From the shadows, a crowd began to emerge. Neighbors, passers-by, people who had nothing to do with this, all witnesses to the truth. Panic flitted across their faces. Their actions, their lies, were fully exposed. I stepped closer, voice slicing through the tension. You built this ending yourselves. No one can save you. Every lie is out. Every scheme is revealed. Then it happened, a perfect domino moment. One of them, trying to justify themselves, accidentally exposed another accomplice. One mistake after another cascaded, revealing everything. I stood there, cold and composed, savoring every second, every glance, every quiver, every fearful expression, proof of their collapse. I didn't stop. I stepped forward, eyes sharp, holding another recording device. I played every secret phone call, the voices clear, every word echoing in the alley. They froze. No denial possible, completely trapped by the truth. They tried to stand, hands shaking, scrambling for remaining evidence, only to drop it all. I didn't speak. I just smiled, letting despair paint itself across their faces. Witnesses murmured, some filming, some stepping closer. I remained still, letting justice unfold, naturally silent, absolute, and then the cherry on top. One of them, in desperation, incriminated another, exposing more evidence than even I expected. Like dominoes, the chain reaction laid everything bare. I stood watching, a cold thrill coursing through me. Every word, every action, heightened that cinematic tension, step by step. Second by second, I felt the rhythm, their heartbeat, their breathing, their shaking eyes. Everything slowed, cinematic, as if the world focused on this final scene. They collapsed into chairs, faces downcast, fully exposed. I picked up the envelope, packed it carefully, and walked out of the alley. Yellow streetlights hit my face. I breathed deeply. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange calm. The spark of conflict had erupted, the climax reached, and justice, silent, absolute, had done its work. There was no hatred, no revenge, just the icy satisfaction of truth asserting itself, undeniable. I stepped onto the main street, blending into the crowd, but I knew everything had changed. The overconfident, the secretive, now laid bare. I smiled to myself, whispering, finally, everything is clear. No turning back. In the days that followed, strange messages and emails continued, but now from witnesses. They asked, warned, tried to find leads, yet I stood outside it all. I observed, analyzed, knowing this. Everything had concluded. Every misdeed, every lie, every scheme had been exposed without any further intervention from me. That evening, looking out my apartment window, yellow lights reflecting on wet rooftops, I knew the conflict had peaked, all arrangements settled. Justice had completed its task. I sat down, closed my eyes, inhaled deeply. A serene satisfaction spread through me. No fear, no doubt, everything revealed. Every betrayal accounted for. I smiled softly, thinking, this is the truth. This is the ending I deserved to witness. The next day, the city carried on as usual. Busy streets, honking cars, people chatting as they walked. Everything seemed ordinary, but inside me, everything had changed. All secrets had been exposed. All deceivers had faced their reckoning. And now I finally understood. The world may never be completely peaceful, but justice, in its own way, always finds its path. I stepped outside and took a long breath. The cool air filled my lungs, carrying the scent of damp earth and coffee from small street cafes. I walked down familiar streets, but now I saw everything differently. Every detail mattered. A sign, a parked car, a fleeting glance. I knew that from this day forward, nothing could be hidden. Those who had once been confident now faced the consequences of their actions. News began to spread. Emails, messages, recordings I had once broadcast were shared publicly. Colleagues, friends, even strangers connected to the situation now knew the truth. Every scheme, every lie, every manipulation had no place to hide. I didn't intervene further. I observed. Some lost their jobs, some faced legal repercussions, others could only hide from the eyes of those who had trusted them. Everything unfolded naturally, as if the universe itself was restoring order. What struck me most was the satisfaction of not having to act directly. I simply stood aside and watched. Each misstep, each faltering movement, each look of regret became proof of their self-destruction. Justice, silent and unspoken, had completed its work. Returning to my apartment, I sat by the window, looking out over the city. Life carried on, people moving, living, breathing. But I knew those responsible for pain had been confronted with reality. A strange sense of peace settled over me. Not glee, not revenge, but freedom. A feeling of completeness, because in the end, everything was out in the open. In the following days, messages came from witnesses, even some former colleagues. We know the truth. Thank you for exposing it all. I only smiled, replying sparingly. No words were needed. The truth spoke for itself. One afternoon, I walked through the park near my home. Children ran and laughed. Dogs barked. Adults chatted on benches. Ordinary life, yet full of vitality. I sat down, closed my eyes, and breathed deeply. In that moment, I realized that what had happened was not only a lesson for them, but also a lesson for me. I learned the power of observation, of patience, of letting events unfold naturally. I realized justice doesn't always need force. Sometimes, simply watching is enough. Most importantly, I understood that true strength comes from calm, from the ability to observe and maintain control over oneself. A week later, the chaos had mostly settled. The city thrived, yet for me, one chapter had closed. I returned to everyday life, morning coffee, evening walks, reading. But deep down, I knew what had happened would always remain part of me. A reminder that every action, every word leaves a trace, and ultimately, everything returns to where it belongs. In that quiet normalcy, a profound confidence settled over me. No fear, no doubt. Everything was revealed. Justice had been done. And I, standing outside it all, had witnessed the truth, whole and intact. I smiled, looking out at the city as sunset painted the sky in shades of gold. The light reflected off rooftops and windows. I whispered to myself, it's over, and now I can live without worry or doubt. Truth has won, finally. I stood and walked down streets filled with light and the sounds of life. A deep calm surged through me. Life would always present new challenges, but I had learned that no matter how chaotic, everything eventually finds its rightful place. I smiled again, a natural, unforced smile, the smile of someone who has understood, who is whole, and who has witnessed justice fulfilled. Weeks had passed since the climax, and everything seemed to have returned to normal. The city was bustling as always, people walking, cars honking, children laughing in the park. Yet I knew that this surface-level normalcy was just a thin veil. Beneath it, everything had changed permanently. Those who had once been confident now faced total collapse. Some lost their jobs, some faced legal action, and others vanished almost entirely from public life. News of leaked information, publicized recordings, and emails became the talk of the town. Gossip and caution following them wherever they went. Every glance, every whispered conversation highlighted truths they could no longer hide. I observed from a distance, taking no action. The feeling was reminiscent of that first night in the dark alley, watching the truth unravel. No need for revenge, no need for intervention. Everything was self-inflicted, and the satisfaction was silent, deep, and complete. But I also realized something. This power, the ability to observe, to let events unfold and reveal themselves, was not merely a weapon against wrongdoers. It was also a responsibility. Every action, every decision, every silence leaves consequences. And I, standing outside it all, had to live with that awareness. One morning, I received an unusual email. No sender, just a single line. We know you've seen everything, and we're watching too. My heart remained steady. No panic, just a calm understanding. The world would never be truly peaceful. Unexposed threats, unknown dangers were always waiting for the right moment. I decided not to fear. Instead, I sharpened my awareness, listened more carefully, and analyzed every tiny detail. I understood the strength in patience, in letting truth reveal itself. But I also knew vigilance was the key to survival. In the following days, I walked through the city, met old friends, drank coffee at familiar cafes, and read in quiet corners. Yet each step, each glance, each story I encountered was analyzed and remembered. I could see the subtle shifts in people around me: caution, curiosity, even vague fear. One afternoon, as the sun dipped lower, I walked along the main street, golden light spilling over wet sidewalks. I felt the city's rhythm, but I also sensed the invisible flow of information. Observing every action, every subtle reaction, I understood that true power didn't come from controlling others directly, but from grasping and understanding the currents of what was happening around you in a rare moment of stillness. I looked down the street and noticed a group of young people chatting and laughing. Yet I sensed a subtle tension in their eyes, as if part of the previous events still haunted them. I smiled faintly. Justice had run its course, but consequences, awareness, and lessons lingered. Long after the spotlight faded, as night fell, I returned to my apartment, opening the window to gaze at the city in darkness. Lights reflected off rooftops. The sounds of cars and distant conversations filled the air. I knew everything was still moving. Unknown variables still existed. But I was no longer afraid. I had learned how to observe, to let truth emerge, and to maintain calm amidst chaos. In that moment, I realized the story was far from over. Unexposed wrongdoers still existed. New schemes were lurking. But I was ready to watch, ready to wait, and ready to act if necessary. I smiled to myself, feeling a silent strength coursing through me. Life went on, but I knew this: every secret, every action, every scheme leaves its mark. And if you know how to watch, how to wait, every truth will eventually reveal itself. I walked through the night-lit streets, my shadow stretching long under the streetlights, feeling calm, confident, and steady. I smiled, whispering to myself, "It's not over, but now I am ready for anything." Time passed, and the city seemed to have forgotten the events that had once shaken everyone. The streets remained busy, people rushed about their routines, cars filled the roads, and the laughter of children still echoed through the parks. Yet I knew that this outward normalcy was just a thin veneer, hiding profound changes beneath the surface. Every fleeting glance, every gesture, every story I overheard carried remnants of the turbulent days past, and I observed it all with meticulous attention. Those who had once been confident, believing themselves above the rules, now had to calculate each step carefully. Some lost power, others lost their reputations, and a few almost vanished from public life entirely. I didn't intervene directly, but I knew that what they experienced was the inevitable consequence of their actions. Justice had been served. Yet the world still operated under its own rules, never completely clear, never truly peaceful. I stepped out one early morning, mist hanging low over the streets, pale golden sunlight spilling onto wet sidewalks. Cafes began to open, the sound of glass doors clinking, the aroma of coffee drifting through the air. I walked slowly, observing every detail. A car stopped, people exchanged words over phones, eyes darting nervously yet trying to hide it. I smiled to myself. The traces of past events lingered, silent threads linking the past and present. The sense of power came from observation and understanding. I had learned that influence does not always require action. Sometimes, simply standing aside, watching, analyzing every detail, and letting the truth reveal itself was enough for events to align as they should. But alongside the external calm, I realized vigilance could never be relaxed. An unexpected email, a strange phone call, or a suspicious glance could all signal a new threat. In the weeks that followed, I focused on strengthening myself, reading more, studying strategy, observing societal trends, and honing analytical skills. Every tiny detail was recorded, every fleeting gesture analyzed. I realized true power doesn't lie in controlling others, but in understanding, anticipating, and being prepared. One afternoon, as the sun cast its last light over rooftops and streets, I paused in the park where part of the chaos had unfolded. Children ran and played, adults chatted, laughter echoed, everything appeared ordinary. Yet I sensed the hidden currents of information yet to surface, relationships still unexposed, opportunities and dangers lying in wait. I sat on a bench, closed my eyes, and breathed deeply. In that stillness, I realized the journey was far from over. The wrongdoers had not been fully exposed. New schemes, hidden opportunities, always existed, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. And I, with all my experience, patience, and observation skills, would be ready for anything. Another evening, I walked through dimly lit streets, golden streetlights reflecting on wet pavement and shop windows. I noticed cautious glances, hesitant gestures. A few people previously involved in the upheaval passed by, quickly turning into alleys, avoiding attention. I observed from a distance, memorizing every detail. A small movement could reveal far more than they realized. In the following weeks, I realized that true power did not come from directly controlling others. It lay in observation, analysis, recognizing patterns, predicting behavior, and knowing when to act. Each day, I documented, organized information, and noticed hidden patterns in human behavior. I could sense fear, doubt, opportunity, and even unexposed schemes. One morning, as I opened my apartment window, I noticed a shadow passing down the street across from me. No need to chase, no need to call a name, just observation. That figure, brief and fleeting, carried potential information, risk, or opportunity. I smiled. I had learned never to overlook a detail. Then an anonymous message appeared on my phone. "We are watching. Don't think it's over." This time, I did not flinch. The message did not unsettle me. Instead, it reminded me that the game was still ongoing, that new threats always existed, and I had to remain ready. I continued my life with a new mindset, vigilant, observant, continuously learning. Every step, every story, every passing glance was analyzed. I knew that from the smallest detail, one could predict the next moves of wrongdoers or uncover hidden opportunities. One evening, standing on the balcony looking over the city, I realized that the previous story was only the beginning. A new journey awaited, with challenges yet to be revealed, new schemes, untapped opportunities. But this time, I was prepared, ready to observe, ready to act, and ready to let everything unfold. With me understanding every detail, I walked through the night-lit streets, streetlights reflecting on puddles, my shadow stretching long behind me. The calm within me was no longer innocence or naivety. It was the calm of awareness, self-control, and the ability to grasp every detail. I smiled, whispering to myself, the journey isn't over. But now I'm ready for anything, whatever comes. And in that moment, I felt clearly that all I had experienced, the lessons learned, the strategies developed, every bit of knowledge gained would become my strength for the path ahead. Early in the morning, the city woke up under the pale light of dawn. Everything seemed normal. Shops opening their doors, people walking along the sidewalks, the hum of traffic mixing with birdsong. But I knew that this ordinary facade masked a world that had been irrevocably changed. What had happened before still lingered beneath the surface. Yet this time, everything had found its rightful place. Every antagonist had been positioned exactly where they belonged. I stood on the balcony of my apartment, looking down at the familiar streets. The scene below gave no hint of the undercurrents that had swept through days past, but I saw it with my own eyes. Every glance, every gesture, every way someone carried themselves held information that only a careful observer could interpret. I had learned to read even the smallest signs. Those who had once been confident now faced the ultimate consequences. Some lost everything, their jobs, their reputations, the trust of friends and colleagues. Others had to confront the law with no place to hide, no chance to justify themselves. What had once been concealed was now laid bare, undeniable. I didn't need to participate directly. I stood aside, observing, and let the truth reveal itself. Step by step, action by action, reaction by reaction, they became their own evidence, their own downfall. There was no need for revenge, no need for envy. Justice unfolded silently, but with undeniable power. The scene was both satisfying and contemplative. I saw the truth, I saw fairness, but I also realized that real strength comes from calmness, from observation, from not letting emotions dictate actions. I had witnessed it all, learned from it all, and now a confident sense of control spread through me. That afternoon, as sunlight filtered through the trees, I walked through the park where some of the pivotal events had taken place. Children still ran and played, adults chatted, laughter filled the air. Watching it, I understood something crucial. Life moves on, but all consequences, all lessons, all truths had been set in their proper place. I paused on a bench, closed my eyes, and inhaled deeply. In that quiet moment, I understood that it wasn't only justice being served to wrongdoers, it was also a lesson for myself. I learned how to observe, to be patient, to let truth reveal itself, and to maintain calm amid chaos. In the days that followed, the city settled into a more peaceful rhythm. Those who had been involved in past schemes mostly withdrew, silenced or facing the law. News, leaked evidence, emails, and records were made public, making everyone realize that no one could escape the consequences of their actions. Every person had to confront reality. I observed all this from afar, but this time it was more than just observation. I saw the conclusion, the fulfillment. There were no lingering doubts, no remnants of schemes. Everything had been placed exactly where it belonged, like pieces of a completed puzzle. And this feeling was different from all previous experiences. It was a calm satisfaction, yet filled with power. That evening, standing on the balcony and looking over the city bathed in warm golden light, I felt clearly the story had ended, but the lessons remained alive. I smiled, sipped my coffee, and told myself, everything has ended as it should. Truth has prevailed, justice has been served. And I, standing outside, observing it all, have learned how to control myself, how to understand everything, and how to let things follow their natural course. In that moment, I realized something even more important. Real power doesn't come from imposing control over others. It comes from understanding, observing, and allowing events to unfold naturally. I had learned that there was no need for hatred, no need for revenge, only comprehension and patience. Every action leaves a trace, and the truth always finds its way to the surface. The story ended, yet sunlight streamed through the window, reflecting across my face, bringing a sense of relief and complete peace. I walked along the streets, my shadow stretching long under the streetlights, feeling confidence, calm, and a quiet power flowing through me. Life continued, but now I knew every secret would be revealed. Every action has consequences, and truth always triumphs. I smiled, looking toward the horizon. This story is over, but I am ready for anything that comes next. Truth and justice will always exist, and I, with everything I've learned, will always stand firm. And so, a chapter closed, complete and satisfying, yet leaving a sense that new challenges would inevitably arise. The story had reached its conclusion, but the lessons, the awareness, and the strength I had gained would remain, guiding me through whatever came next.